going on, everybody? C4, welcome back to the channel. And today, ahead of tonight's kickoff game between the Bucs and the Cowboys, felt like it's a good opportunity to throw out my NFL predictions for the upcoming football season and either get people hype, most likely get people upset, but eventually we're going to figure out who's going to be the best team in my opinion and who is going to win the Super Bowl come February 2022. So without further ado, man, I just want to get right into it. Let's go. We're going to start in the AFC. Let's start in the AFC North. Looking at the AFC North here, I don't think there's going to be anybody that's going to really complain about the Cincinnati Bengals being last place. I don't think they did enough on the offensive line. I think they should have went Sewell over Chase. But either way, I think if you're Cincinnati, you just want to see enough this year to be like, oh man, we could be good. So let's just fire our coach, get Joe Brady to reunite with Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase, and let's just try to capture that LSU team here in Cincinnati. I think that's probably best case for the Bengals this year, and Joe Burrow staying healthy behind an awful offensive line. The other three teams in the AFC North, I actually have making the playoffs. The Pittsburgh Steelers at 10-7. I think really that's more so because of the defense. Their defense is always good. You're going to have Minka as a ball hawk. You're going to have maybe a Devin Bush takes this game to the next level, but ultimately you have TJ Watt, a player who I think is going to be right in the mix for Defensive Player of the Year for the entirety of the season. I think that combined with the fact that it's going to be a little bit of maybe the last dance for Ben Roethlisberger. You got Najee Harris there, and even though I think the O-line, much like the Bengals, pretty suspect, I think there'll be enough there for the Pittsburgh Steelers to scratch and claw their way into the playoffs. And the reason why I have them in the playoffs for some of these other teams in the AFC that you will see, I think their defense. They have a very, very strong defense. Probably top 5 in the AFC, and that's kind of what has them squeezing the playoffs. At second place, I have the Cleveland Browns at 11-6. Really, I could flip-flop. And I did flip-flop. I just think the Ravens have a couple easier games. I think the Browns are the slightly better team for the Cleveland Browns. I think if you're looking, maybe you don't have the star power of the Bills or the Kansas City Chiefs, but from top to bottom, I think the Cleveland Browns might have the best roster on the AFC side of things. You just need, I think for the Browns this year, you need Odell to be a wide receiver 1, not, hot and cold. Some weeks he'll give you 100 yards, some weeks he's a ghost. You need Odell to step it up. You have one of the best O-lines, one of the best, probably the best 1-2 punch at running back. The defense only got better. You got JOK and Greg Newsome in the draft, a healthy Grant Delpit. You added Jadeveon Clowney. The Browns are going to be for real this year. And I think, I'd say they're the most talented team in the North. Ravens just had a couple better games here or there. For Baltimore, 12-5, they lose J.K. Dobbins. I'm a believer in Bus Edwards. I think he could step up. I think Lamar Jackson's going to have an outstanding year. Once they get Rashad Bateman healthy, hopefully they figure out, some sort of hierarchy in that wide receiver room. Great tight end, O-line solid, defense always good. So yeah, I have 3 teams from the AFC North making the playoffs. Let's take a look at the AFC East. Go from the bottom, work our way up. I have the Jets at the bottom. I like what Joe Douglas is doing there. Still think they're a year away. They're a year away of roster building, a year away of adding on the defense, adding on the offense. I think that'll be fun to watch. I think that'll be a fun 4-13 season. I think Zach Wilson's going to be good. Corey Davis should be good, but the run game, little suspect. I think the offensive line is coming. You get AVT, you got Mekhi Becton. Let's keep building that offensive line going into the next year. Defense kind of in a transitionary period a little bit. Got to take another year of acquiring talent to fit that solid mold. So I think the Jets, well, I'm not low on the Jets, even though I am low on the Jets. I think it's still a work in progress, but they will be a lot better next season. We have the Dolphins at 9-8. They're going to be competitive, really good defense. The reason why I have them at 9-8 is ultimately the quarterback spot. What's going on there? Is Deshaun Watson a thing? Are they going to fully commit to Tua? Is Tua going to be the real deal? I think 9-8. I think for how good they were last year, 9-8 would be very disappointing. But I think if you can get to 9-8, remain that level of competitiveness with Tua, I think there is some wins in there. There's some positives. Like, all right, well, a game or two goes our way. We're a playoff team with Tua. So if we can expect Tua to get a little bit better going into next season, maybe you still have something there at that QB spot. But that same kind of goes with the Patriots at 10-7. First team out that I have in the playoffs in the AFC. And ultimately throwing it up to a couple rookie jitter games maybe for Mac Jones. There's going to be a couple shaky performances in there. It happens every single year. And those 1 or 2 losses are ultimately big picture at the end of the year. Got to cost them a spot in the playoffs. But 10-7 with a rookie quarterback. Think, while disappointing, Patriot fans will be optimistic about the future. And then I have the number 3 seed, the Buffalo Bills, 12-5. I think the Bills are probably better than 12-5. Like, I don't think they're the 3rd best team in the AFC. They have a tough schedule, though. So kind of the nature of that. I think from a talent standpoint, Josh Allen's getting ready to run wild. They have renowned world scientist Cole Beasley on the squad, which is great. You add Emmanuel Sanders, you have Stephon Diggs. Like, Diggs and Josh Allen, probably the 2nd best wide receiver quarterback tandem in the AFC after Mahomes and Tyreek. Maybe they can even challenge that this year, potentially. Run game, let's commit to Zach Moss. That's what I want to see there. With a little bit of Singletary still sprinkled in it. O-line solid. Defense got better. They added Rousseau in the draft. I think it's someone else. Boogie Basham, I think, in the draft. Like, I think they did good business on the defensive side of the ball from their young players from the draft. And ultimately, 12-5 for the Buffalo Bills. Let's go. I'm in. I'm buying stock on the Bills. For the AFC South, well, the Texans at the bottom, they're going to be probably one of the worst teams in the NFL. It is what it is. The Deshaun Watson stuff, you're going to Rod Taylor as your starting quarterback. They arguably have the least talented roster right now. Someone has to be bad. And I don't think it's a hot take. Too outlandish, say the Texans are probably going to be there. I have the Jags at 3-14. Maybe a little bit unfair. I actually kind of want the Jags to be exciting. I want the Jags to, Trevor Lawrence hit the ground running. I'm a big fan of J-Rob. I think there's going to be some learning because I don't know if a 3-14 kind of puts everything to disarray with Urban Meyer, but I do think there is going to be that wall that Urban Meyer hits where like, oh, this is not really college. It's not as easy as I thought. So yeah, I'm low on the Jags. I don't know if 3-14 will be how confident I would put money that the Jags are for sure going to have 3 wins or less. But that's just kind of how I came up with the schedule. They kind of have a little bit of a tough schedule. And I think ultimately there's going to be some growing pains with Urban Meyer and all that. It's a new era there in Jacksonville. And they might stumble over the blocks here a little bit. I have the Colts 9 seed, 9-8. All I really care about the Colts, honestly, is just Carson Wentz play enough snaps to get the Philadelphia Eagles that first round pick. I think the Colts, again, nature, they kind of have a tough schedule. I think they have a couple injuries. Can Wentz stay healthy? If Wentz doesn't stay healthy, which as much as I want that first round pick, he just hasn't done that. There's going to be a couple losses thrown in there, especially if you have to go, rely on Eason or Ellinger or whoever at quarterback. So 9-8 for the Colts. And then at the top seed there, number 4 in the AFC overall. The Titans make the playoffs at 10-7. Think overall, if I'm comparing the Titans roster this year to last year, probably a stronger roster last year. They lost Corey Davis. They lost some guys and pieces on the defense, Adoree Jackson, even though a lot of Titan fans are like, oh, he sucked anyway. But I think if you look at what's going in versus what's going out, I think they lost more, but they definitely got some great pieces. I'm very excited to see what the corner can do that they got there out of Virginia Tech. But ultimately, you still got Tannehill. You still got A.J. Brown. You got Julio Jones. You got Derrick Henry. You got a good O-line. Solid defense. 10-7. Titans winning that division. Finishing up the AFC with the West, I have the Raiders bottom dwellers 4-13. I really what extent, if people are saying Mayock's going to go before John Gruden. But at what point do you get rid of John Gruden? Or do they sacrifice Derek Carr and give John Gruden an opportunity with a brand new quarterback? I don't know. I think it's going to be a long season for them. And I like the Raiders. Out of all these teams, even though I got, Andy Reid, and I genuinely like every team in the West. I think Raiders, from a neutral standpoint, could be a fun team. I would love to see Henry Ruggs kind of break out. I just think defensively, it's a struggle. What they did on the offensive line, just pillaging their own O-line. A lot of questionable calls there for the Raiders for me to have any confidence in them. Are the Broncos at 9-8, just kind of missing out in the playoffs there, and ultimately it comes down to the quarterback spot. Passing on Justin Fields could be I just think it's preseason, right? We've seen limited action from Justin Fields, but you look at the Broncos secondary and you look at their quarterback room. Do you think they needed PS2, or do you think they'd be a little bit more confident, fans in front office, if they had Justin Fields there at quarterback? Yeah, 9-8. Yeah, it's just Teddy. I think Teddy's a 9-8 quarterback, 8-8, 500 quarterback, somewhere in that range. I have the Chargers actually make the playoffs. This was probably the only surprise that I had once I just kind of for this website that I use, you literally just go matchup to matchup who you think's going to win, and you look at big picture at the end. I do like the Chargers. I do think there's some questions with the coaching staff. It's a inexperienced coaching staff, and just to assume that they're going to hit the ground running and make the playoffs 10 wins, that's kind of a big ask, but I also am a big believer in Justin Herbert. I love Austin Eckler. Keenan Allen's a beast. They got Canadian Josh Palmer in there to kind of supplement Mike Williams because he's always out. O-line got better. Defense is going to be healthy. A healthy Derwin James, healthy Joey Bosa. I think their defense is what's going to surprise people and get them maybe a couple more wins than you'd be expecting from the outside looking in. So yeah, Chargers making the playoffs. And I can say right now for this video, that's probably the biggest surprise that I had when all was said and done. And then on top, you have the Chiefs, 15-2, best team in the AFC for sure. They're so good. How did they not have premier picks and still got premier players? There's no way they should have got Nick Bolton, Creed Humphrey, and Trey Smith in the draft. That's the rest of the NFL just letting the rich get richer. Now we're gonna look at the NFC. In the NFC North, I have the Lions, bottom dwellers, 4-13. I'm just not a believer in Goff, even though I'm entertained by Dan Campbell. Maybe they'll be slightly better, but I don't think, at worst case scenario, do you think if you're a Lions fan that's upset me having the last place, do you think they're really going to win the division? Probably not. So then what does it really matter? You miss the playoffs by 1 game. You missed the playoffs by 6 or 7. You didn't miss the playoffs, you know? Got Minnesota at 6-11. I think that this is going to be the final year that kind of ushers out the Kirk Cousins era. I think there's going to be enough positives that you're going to look like, you know, maybe we get rid of Cousins. Maybe we look at alternatives to Zimmer going on offensive direction in the offseason. But either way, I think the Vikings they're just missing a little bit, and they also have a very tough schedule. We have the Bears at 8-9, and the Bears actually were behind the Vikings until I just made the decision that I was like, all right, week 10, week 11, they're going to go to Fields, and there's going to be a couple games late that they're going to win with Fields, and then they're going to be like, can we fire Matt Nagy because we have Justin Fields playing from the get-go? Maybe we make the playoffs. That's my only season prediction there for the Chicago Bears. And then we have the Packers top dog, 13-4, last dance, Aaron Rodgers, Devontae Adams. They got a really healthy run game. Didn't have the best offseason, but obviously they had one of the more tumultuous off seasons. But I still think Green Bay's they're too good for that division right now this season. We have the NFC South. Looking at the bottom, the Falcons. Many are expecting Atlanta to be bottom dwellers. Probably the last year of the Matt Ryan era. And I think if you're a Falcon fan at this point, if you're you're not going to be good, you might as well suck so you can get a great quarterback to come in and replace your former great quarterback in Matt Ryan. Even though, if I had to say it of all the teams that suck, maybe Arthur Smith is just a wizard with older-ish quarterbacks and giving them second life, like what he did with Tannehill in Tennessee. And maybe we get Matt Ryan playing like MVP Matt Ryan, and the Falcons kind of surprised. I have the Panthers at 7-10. Like what they're doing there. Big fan of Matt Rule. Big fan of their roster. Big fan of their draft. Still just think O-line needs to get better. You know, what do you got at quarterback? What can Joe Brady the Wizard do? You're going to be betting on Joe Brady making Sam Darnold in one offseason the quarterback that we thought he was coming out of USC, or at least the prospect we thought he was at USC. I think Sam Darnold 7-10 can look promising, but I don't think it's a 1-year project to fix Sam Darnold. And if you're fixing Sam Darnold, give me 2 years. It's got to be 2 years minimum. Hopefully they can keep Joe Brady for that time. I just have the Panthers. 7-10, I don't think it's a bad record for the Panthers. We have the Saints at 10-7 with Jameis Winston. I think ultimately the Saints kind of like how I feel about the Pittsburgh Steelers. You always think all right, they got a good offense, good defense. But in reality, I think the Saints, it's their defense that's getting them here at 10-7. They have an outstanding defense. Just traded for Roby from the Texans to secure and really upgrade that secondary a little bit. Offensively, they're still going to be solid, but it's running through Alvin Kamara. Obviously, in addition to Michael Thomas, if he does join the roster, they don't trade him or anything like that. That's going to be a big boost. And I think Jameis Winston will be solid enough to operate that offense, but still 10-7. I think there's going to be some Jameis Winston hiccups around the way. And then we have Tampa at 14-3. They best roster in the NFL. How do you win the Super Bowl? How do you have that much talent and don't lose anybody? They 14-3 is their floor as well. They can absolutely if you said put money on a team that can go undefeated this year, I would also throw that money on the Bucs. NFC East time. Oh boy. I have the Giants last place. Philly second last. There's no real winners here. Both these teams are just looking forward to the next draft where we both have multiple first round picks and hopefully it can be better for the Giants. Not a believer in Daniel Jones. Most of the star talent that they acquired has been injury prone. And that's it. I think the O-line's still not good enough, and you need to have an outstanding offensive line here in the in any division, but particularly in the East. I think you look at the Philadelphia Eagles, 6-11. Don't have them doing particularly well within the division. Got an inexperienced coaching staff. You got Jalen Hurts, so we know my thoughts of Jalen Hurts. I'm pulling for him, but I'm preparing for the worst, hoping for the best kind of deal with that quarterback room. I think we still have a lot of talent, a lot of veteran talent. Our O-line, if they can stay healthy, is going to be one of the better O-lines in the NFL. Same with our defense, but can we stay healthy? Was Doug Peterson the problem? Was his training and practicing all that stuff? Or, are we still going to be just banged up, injured, never having the full strength team and finishing 6-11, finishing as one of the bottom dwellers? So it's kind of where I'm at with the Eagles. Easily the most underwhelming I'm feeling about an Eagles season since I've been a fan. And I'll say that. And then there's a level of excitement because anytime they do look good, or if they do look good, the unknown of them potentially being good is exciting. But this is probably the first year as a Philadelphia Eagle fan that I'm going into the season being like, oh, they're going to suck this year. I have the Cowboys at 9-8. I think it still just comes down. I don't think their defense is going to be that good. I think there's going to be maybe a couple games early on that the offense may take a little bit to get into sync with Dak Prescott. Dallas is not going to be bad. Very strong offensively. But can the O-line stay healthy? What's Dak going to look like? Can Amari Cooper just stop being bipolar in terms of production? And is the defense going to figure it out? I don't think so, but it's going to be neck and neck between them And a football team. I have Washington football team coming first place, winning the East. They're pretty much the same team that was pretty good last year. They throw in Fitzmagic, who, you know, on any given week, he can outduel any quarterback, it feels like. I think they have the best defense in the division. And, you know, all it's going to take is, like, all right, just Curtis Samuel, Terry McLaurin, Antonio Gibson. Like, do they slightly develop a little bit, take their game to a little bit of a better level? And if they do that, I think they are the team to beat in the NFC East. But that's it. I don't want to talk about it anymore because the Eagles are not very high. And then we finish with, I think, the best division in football, the NFC West, where the last place Cardinals at 9-8 would be competitive in any other division. The big question, I just think you look at the roster, you know, they throw in J.J. Watt, they add, you know, a couple other pieces here and there. A.J. Green is not really that big of an addition, but I think when you look at the Cardinals, it still comes down to, like, out of all these teams, which coach do you believe the least in? And I would argue it's probably Pete Carroll and Cliff Kingsbury. And if Cliff Kingsbury doesn't make the playoffs, does he get fired? Like, are the Cardinals going to be better if they go with, you know, a more experienced coach? I still feel like that's the weak link for the Cardinals. That's why I don't have them. But absolutely at 9-8, if one of these other teams gets hit with injuries or something like that, the Cardinals are a playoff caliber squad for sure. Kyler Murray is really good. I think their run game's a little suspect, but they don't really need a strong run game when you can just throw it to DeAndre Hopkins. You got the young guys there, Isabella, Rondale Moore. You got A.J. Green, could have a career resurgence. I think the O-line's, you know, average, slightly above average. Defense got better, but I still think there's a lot more questions on the Cardinals roster than any of the other teams in the division. I have the Niners at 11-6, still going to be pretty good. Hopefully go to Trey Lance sooner than later, but, you know, either side of the ball, the Niners are fairly strong. Maybe some questions about that secondary a little bit. But you're going to have a healthy Nick Bosa. That should help for sure because he's going to be generating a lot more pressure. And if they can figure out that quarterback spot, Niners are good, man. They're going to run the ball over everyone. Ayuk, Deebo Samuel, pretty good. O-line strong. We have the Seattle Seahawks. Yeah, it's a tie. I don't really know what the tiebreaker is. But again, it's still Seattle, last hurrah. Russ Wilson. Is it the last hurrah? I mean, there's a lot of people that are just assuming that Russell Wilson might leave this offseason. But I still think for me, Seattle with him, DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett. The O-line is still good, okay, serviceable. I mean, serviceable has been a big upgrade for what Russ has had in the past. Their defense is still fairly good. I think really between the Seahawks, 49ers, and Cardinals, you know, any kind of order, given like how the injuries or something like that plays out, but that's kind of how I have it. But the top team, the Rams, I think the Rams are firmly my top team in that division. You don't have them one game higher. I think Matt Stafford is going to be very good there. I think their offense is going to be very good. O-line, yeah, maybe a little bit concerns the run game. They lost Akers, but you know, I think ultimately for the Rams, Sony Michel, they don't. It's another one of those teams like the Cardinals. Like, do they really need like that balanced offense? You got Matt Stafford. He's played his entire. It would be nice to have a run game, but you got a quarterback that just hasn't had a run game ever. So I think that there's definitely room for the Rams to be like, all right, this is familiar territory for Stafford. We have scary defense, scary star players. I think their star players are going to carry them to a divisional title. So let's start in the AFC Wildcard, where I have first the Browns knocking off the Titans. Again, I just think the Browns roster from top to bottom is going to be a little bit too much to handle for the Tennessee Titans. I have the Bills beating the Chargers. I think Buffalo, bad matchup for the Chargers. That's going to be an exciting matchup, though. Josh Allen going up against Justin Herbert is going to be one of the better matchups going forward in the future here of the NFL, especially in the AFC. And then I have the Ravens. That's going to be an awesome game no matter what way you cut it. I just think the Ravens are a better squad than the Pittsburgh Steelers. Push comes to shove, the Ravens will be healthy by this point. Hopefully there's some chemistry there between Lamar Jackson and Rashad Bateman. You got old Bus Edwards doing his thing. Give me the slight edge to the Ravens here. Moving on in the wild card. NFC wild card. Football team against Seattle. Very close. I just de facto to like, all right, it's going to be Fitzpatrick going against Russ. And while I don't want to root or cheer for any NFC East team, I think a Fitzmagic playoff run from a neutral standpoint could be kind of fun. But I'm going to not take Fitzpatrick over Russell Wilson. Just heads up, trying to project here. So give me Seattle. I have the Rams and the Niners. Think I'll go with the stronger quarterback in that matchup with the Rams. And then we have the Packers and the Saints. Same thing, going with the stronger quarterback. Give me Aaron Rodgers over Jameis Winston. AFC Divisional. Buffalo Bills, Baltimore Ravens. I think Bills. I went with the Buffalo Bills. I think this is a very close matchup. And I can almost, it's lazy, but I go with quarterbacks. At the end of the day, do I like Lamar Jackson in a playoff game? It's going to be very tough. Do I like Josh Allen in a playoff game? This is going to be a coming out party for one of those quarterbacks. Because I think there's big questions about how these guys are going to perform in the clutch for Lamar. for Josh Allen. I think I would just slightly go Josh Allen in this matchup. And then we have the Chiefs and the Browns. Probably the two best rosters, you would argue, in the AFC. And again, it's like, do I go Baker Mayfield, or do I trust Patty Mahomes to be absolutely pissed off, fueled from the Super Bowl loss last year, determined to get back there again? I'm not betting against Patrick Mahomes. For the NFC, was my hot take. Well, not my first one. I have the Bucs over the Seahawks at the bottom there. I think the Bucs are, again, injuries can derail anybody's season. They're going back to the Super Bowl. If they can stay healthy, they just have straight up the talent that no one of the other teams have. The tough one, probably the toughest prediction so far, the Rams and the Packers. The finals, what do they call it? The last dance for Aaron Rodgers, potentially. Devontae Adams, potentially. You look at I just think it's gonna be one of those games where I think Stafford finally gets one. I don't know what the career head-to-head is between Stafford while he's on the Lions and Rodgers while he's on the Packers. It's probably very much skewed towards Aaron Rodgers at this point. I'm going for an upset. I wanted to throw in an upset here, maybe go slightly against what my gut was saying, and that's why I went with the Rams over the Packers, sending them to the NFC Championship. And the AFC Championship, just because I didn't want, two teams going back to potentially the same Super Bowl, that's lazy. I'm going Bills an upset. Now, the last time the Bills played the Chiefs, it was not particularly close. If I remember correctly, the Chiefs just ran the ball down their throats. It's just another year for Buffalo. I think Buffalo, chance to redeem that game, chance to figure out what wasn't working. And I just want to buy in on a team this year. And if I'm buying in on a team, I'm buying in on Josh Allen, Sean McDermott, and the Buffalo Bills to just slightly edge the Kansas City Chiefs in the AFC Championship game. And in the NFC Championship game, it is McVay against Brady yet again, and I'm going to give the edge to Tom. I mean, hey, if you're doing these type of videos where you're projecting, you can't assume injuries. So you almost just have to think about it like you're playing a Madden season with injuries turned off. What team's gonna do what? And I think push comes to shove, the Bucs to a man have a stronger roster than the Rams. I think Brady might have McVay figured out just a little bit. I think there could be a lot of pressure for the Rams here. Could also be big time redemption for the Rams here. McVay trying to come up with he's an outstanding game planner, the game plan of all game plans. They take down Brady and the Bucs. I'm not betting against that Bucs roster this year. It's filthy. It's disgusting. In the Super Bowl, just to be fun, again, I think last year I predicted the Chiefs to win it twice, and they actually went back again. And I'm going to kind of follow that formula, but I just want to hedge our bets here a little bit. Let's try to be a little out there. I have the Buffalo Bills on the shoulders of Josh Allen becoming one of the faces of the league, winning the Super Bowl finally. That's 100% what I did here. I think if you told me C4 you had to put your mortgage, your house, on one of these teams, I'd take the safe bet. I'd go with the Bucs. But for this video, to try to get hyped, to try to buy in and get invested in a team this year that I think could do well, the story of Buffalo finally winning a Super Bowl on the arm of Josh Allen, Zach Moss, Stephon Diggs, Trey White, Rachel Bush, Jordan Poyer, Micah Hyde, Tremaine Edmonds, Matt Milano, and of course, renowned scientist Cole Beasley. I'm in. I'm in on everybody except that one guy, Cole Beasley, who actually looks like my brother. There's my Super Bowl, baby. Buffalo Bills. When all is said and done, the 3 seed in the AFC is going to be your Super Bowl champion. And then, like I said, for awards and stuff like that, I didn't really plan this for the video. MVP, I'd probably say Mahomes. Offensive Player of the Year, Josh Allen. Defensive Player of the Year, Myles Garrett. Comeback Player of the Year, Saquon Barkley. Offensive Rookie of the Year, Zach Wilson. Defensive Rookie of the Year, give me Micah Parsons, maybe. And then Coach of the Year. What do I have making the playoffs here? Who's someone that shouldn't have made the playoffs that made the playoffs? Riverboat Ron? But then he wins the NFC. If you win the NFC, no one's getting any respect there. I would assume, just based off of the video that you saw, it's probably Staley in the Chargers. Chargers making the playoffs, they'd probably give him Coach of the Year. But there you go, guys. Those are my predictions ahead of the regular season that starts tonight. Let me know how you guys feel about it in the comment section below. Just a little bit of a fun video. We'll be back tomorrow. I think actually, I might spittle it up. I want to do, actually, you know what? I'm going to have another maybe non-Madden. Maybe I'll double up a little. I want to do an overreaction to Week 1 college football mock draft. That might be out tomorrow. But thank you guys very much for watching. As always, your first time stopping by, don't be afraid to hit that subscribe button, smash the like button, little thumbs up if you enjoyed. Helps with the videos and the YouTube algorithm. And I'll see you guys back here on the next one. Have a good Week 1. Hope all your teams do good, all your fantasy teams do good, and go Birds.